Big moves are currently happening with Pokemon, especially as we do have the 30th celebration that's literally just knocking on everyone's door, and we all are kind of expecting what's going to happen with the future of Pokemon cards at the moment, especially because there is this weird thing happening right now, because is there hype building or is hype slowly coming down? Like, it is a very awkward time. I do have to admit though, as much as Pokemon cards have been in this wonky period, other TCGs are doing crazy things, man. Palworld is really exciting. I have made a video talking about Palworld, and I did lay out my thoughts on the TCG. I know a lot of you asked for that. I did make that in my previous video. But like I said, man, Palworld's got some exciting things happening with that in the TCG space, especially with how many people just love, I spoke about it in the previous video. I don't want to rehash everything in this video, but essentially Palworld, a lot of people find it as a bit of a, it's almost like there's a big super fandom around Palworld and being connected to it and all those things around there. And then you have Dragon Ball, One Piece, all these other TCGs are growing, Lorcana as well. We're in a different era for trading cards, especially Yu-Gi-Oh, man. I'm telling you, when Magnificent Monsters releases later this year, I think it's actually next month, you're gonna see Yu-Gi-Oh get a lot of wind beneath its wings, man. There's gonna be a lot of people speaking about Yu-Gi-Oh because Magnificent Monsters will be the first set to include serialized Yu-Gi-Oh cards for the English TCG. I am expecting that I will be covering some of that, man. I've got a feeling, yeah, just an intuition. The prices of the serialized English cards, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't even know what we can expect. When I look at the Japanese serialized prices for the cards, they're insane. Imagine the English. Will it be more? Will it be less? Only time's gonna tell, and we're gonna figure all that out very soon. There is something interesting I've noticed, and I'll show you that throughout this video, that you do have Hypermodern going through this period of some aggression in terms of how much it's dropped, or not many people are that interested in Hypermodern, which is your Pikachu from Ascended Heroes, your Mega Gengar Special Illustration Rare, the Mega Dragonite SIR. These are your Hypermodern, the Mega Charizard X, right? These are your cards that released either very late last year or all the top chase cards that have released this year. But it is interesting, and what I'm finding crazy right now is that the older Pokemon cards, or whatever word we want to use it, because we've got a word, you know what I've noticed in this hobby, and we need to kind of collectively agree on this. We have a word for vintage cards. We all know vintage, which is like pretty much, where does vintage end? I suppose we can say 2008 if you want to, I don't know. These things aren't confirmed by anyone. I'm just making this up, but I think where does vintage end? Let's just say we all say vintage ends in 2007, because a lot of people would say vintage technically ends when the Wizard of the Coast era kind of got transferred over, and that kind of stopped 2003 or whatever. I suppose though, you could kind of make an argument that, hey, vintage up to 2008. Then you've got that period of like 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I don't know what we call that. Mid-era. Sure, mid-era actually works, okay? Then you've got the modern cards, which I still consider Sword and Shield modern, but they're kind of older cards as well. So we don't have is it new modern, old modern? Like, how do we use that? Is a modern Pokemon? Is Moonbron a modern Pokemon card? Kind of is, kind of isn't. I don't know. So we've got a word with the hyper modern, but the cards that I'm talking about is your Sword and Shield era, the Sun and Moon tag team. All those cards are being quite resilient. And what does that tell you? There is a big shift that has taken place with collectibles, with Hypermodern not being able to withstand the kind of drops that are happening, whereas those earlier modern Pokemon cards, see, I don't have the word. You right now need to figure out the word for me. Those new, old, modern Pokemon cards, they're kind of being a little bit more resilient, and I'm gonna show you that in a second. All right, I just wanna do a bit of a market kind of update of what's happening with Hypermodern at the moment. As we all know, that is a new term that has popped up, but $1,400 for the Pikachu, right now selling for $1,070. That has, I'm gonna pull that in the month graph right there. You can see it was selling for 1.16, right now selling for 1070. It is dropping, okay? Even though it's slow, it is dropping. I have to admit, with the Pikachu, I don't know. To me, this card a bit overhyped, okay? I'm not the biggest. It's Pikachu in a forest. Like Bubble Mew is creative as, okay? It's an exciting artwork. The Mega Charizard X, I get that, dude. I get that card's hype. It looks so sick. It is in your face. It is a cool artwork, okay? You got all the whole Charizard, the Charmander line in there. Moonbron. Dude, Lost Origin Giratina, these artworks inspire you, man. They actually make you go like, wow, you know what? That is a card. That is sick. This doesn't do that for me at all. I'd love to know your opinion, but for the price that I'm paying for a card like this, I just don't look at this and go, you know what? what a card in my collection. What a card. I'm not looking at the Pikachu and thinking that, okay? Now also, while speaking about these Pokemon cards, if you do love buying and selling Pokemon cards, then that does bring me to today's video sponsor, Double Holo. Now, Double Holo is a Pokemon marketplace, and it's really great as well if you want to become a seller, because it has some really competitive platform fees being only 4.9%. Though, as much as Double Holo works as a marketplace and there's so many cool features there, where it really shines is with some of its premium features. So there is one premium tool known as Top Picks. Now, why I really like this one is because on Top Picks, it actually uses an AI multi-factor analysis, and it shows you the top 10 cards to look out for in the market right now versus the top 10 cards to avoid. Another awesome premium tool is the pack value analysis. And what pack value does is it actually calculates an EV or an expected value and then compares it to the current price of the booster pack. Now, what's really awesome, if you do want to try out any of the premium tools I just mentioned in this video, you can get a 30% discount off your first month by using the promo code appearing on screen. You can find all the details to Double Holo in the video's description. Honestly, a big thank you to Double Holo supporting the channel. Now let's get back to this video. But here I'm on the Mega Charizard X, the SIR. In the last 3 months, we can see right there, selling for $893. Right now, it's selling for $700. Definitely, hey man, listen, $200 off. If I put that in the month, we can see it was selling for $841. And again, it is dropping, $140 in the last month. That's a big drop, okay? I have to admit though, the Charizard to me is a cool card. Like I said, the Pikachu just doesn't inspire me at all. There's nothing about that artwork that I think, like, if someone transported me into the future, this is the way I'm gonna actually, yep, I got it. I got the way how I'm gonna communicate this to you. If you put me into the future and I looked at modern Pokemon cards and I was talking about Pokemon cards in 2024, if you showed me cards, okay? I'm even talking about 2023 and you showed me some modern cards. If you showed me Bubble Mew, I'd be like, you know what? I reckon that card's gonna be something. If you showed me the Mega Charizard X, I'd be like, hey, there's something interesting about that card. If you showed me even the Umbreon from Prismatic Evolutions, okay, I think that's a good artwork. I'd say, you know what, nah, there's something about that card. That one actually looks a bit different. The Pikachu, I wouldn't get that. I'd be like, yeah, I don't reckon that even gets, I'd be like, the Crown Zenith Pikachu is way cooler of an artwork. Again, my opinion. Interesting, I wanna talk about those cards and those early modern Pokemon cards. If we're gonna talk about Sword and Shield era, as the new modern that kind of shifted, okay? Like I said, the semantics or the terminology for these eras is getting really hard to kind of like, and I'm telling you this as a person that makes content about Pokemon cards, it's hard for me to be like, how do I separate all these eras? I just call it the Sword and Shield era. But like I said, man, let's get a word, be fun. Have some excitement in your life, honestly. Selling here, if we look right there, it was selling for $325 US, the Leafeon VMAX, okay? Throughout the last 6 months, that has just climbed and right now selling for $415. With the hyper modern and everything that's happening with hyper modern Pokemon cards, and you can see that they're dropping. There's much more examples of hyper modern dropping. I'm not gonna just go into everything. You can see that for yourself, whether it's the Mega Greninja, the Mega Darkrai SIR, they're all going down in price, okay? That is what's happening. Right here is interesting because your Sword and Shield era cards, which have had 2 generations of dropping already, haven't really been affected at all with this period. So when people are saying Pokemon cards are dropping, hyper modern is really dropping. A lot of Pokemon cards have just been fine throughout this whole year. Look, in the last 6 months, like I said, that Leafeon was selling for $325. It's nearly climbed $100 in the last 6 months. And albeit this is during a period right here has been the period where cards are meant to be dropping. So yeah, man, you do need to research a bit more. So don't just jump into the thing that the market's crashing. The market's definitely correcting heavily for the new stuff. Same thing here, I'm on the Sylveon VMAX, okay? An Evolving Skies Evolution was selling for $326 US. Again, the last 6 months, right now selling for $402. Hasn't gone up $100, but even with this whole market drop or the slump or whatever we want to call it, stayed a bit more resilient. And look, I have to admit, I really, really like the evolutions from Evolving Skies. Personally, love this Sylveon card, man. Real talk, this is such a good artwork. But again, it is really telling of the signs when you look at some of the evolutions from Evolving Skies and they're not really going through some big correction. But the new stuff is, you do need to ask yourself, is the market really dropping? Because what happens, especially with Pokemon cards, is we're all fixated on the new. I'm not saying that I don't do that too. I do that a lot. I talk about like new cards. I like the new as well. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you got to just like aim your light at a different area. And when we're looking at Sword and Shield era, no, they're not really going through some crazy drop. In fact, like I said, they're not exactly spiking insanely, but in the last 6 months, again, steadily going up. And it shows you that collectibles are interesting because right now the new collectibles are just like no one knows anything about them. Real, and I've always said that. No one one knows anything about Hypermodern at the moment. No one can be an expert in it because there's not enough information. It's just, is it going to drop? Is it going to climb? What is the market price? None of us. We're all bananas when it comes to Hypermodern. We don't know. I won't be able to tell you what the price of the Mega Charizard X will be by the end of the year. I cannot tell you if it's going to go through another spike or if it's going to continue to dropping, and it's just too hard, right? With the older cards, I feel like I have a bit more confidence. I'm not saying I can predict it 100%. I just feel like I've got a bit more understanding of cards from previous generations, whether that be Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield, because you can see the behavior of these cards in the market. Everything is dictated by what people want at any time, but when they start going older and older, they're just a bit more less susceptible, I suppose, to getting some massive market drops, right? In terms of when these new cards come out, yeah, it's just anyone's game. Same thing here with the Glaceon VMAX, another gorgeous card. I mean, all the evolutions from Evolving Skies. I'm focusing on them, but I do think they're really unique artworks, okay? This one was selling for $243, which honestly, like, yo man, in March, $240 for that Glaceon raw. It's a great card. Like who doesn't love that card? It's even got a Pikachu cameo in it. Anyway, we did have that whole cameo thing that happened around this period too. That probably caused a little bit of for the card to come up in price. But we're selling for $243, and we can see right now in the last 6 months, right now selling for $309. Again, none of these evolutions have gone up from $240. They haven't doubled or any crazy market movement that's shocked everyone. They've just been steadily climbing up. No big drops, no big sudden insane movements in the market, nothing wild and people go, what is happening? What's going on? No, all three evolutions that I've just showed you have stayed quite stable. What about when we look at another card, okay? Let's look at another Evolving Skies card, like the Dragonite V. Again, I'm looking at the Dragonite V from Evolving Skies, was selling for $362 in March. And that's actually climbed a lot during this period, selling for $550. It's actually a big rise, okay? So there is interesting things happening with these cards. But look, I'm talking about Evolving Skies singles, right? Okay, Evolving Skies, if you're new to the hobby or if you just entered this year with Ascended Heroes, maybe you haven't learned. Evolving Skies was the set. That was like, wow, this was one of the most insane sets that released. It featured the Moonbryon and a lot of these evolution cards I've shown you, Rayquaza, all those other cards. It was big set, big deal, okay? One of the first sets that it pretty much made modern Pokemon investing take off to what it is today. A lot of people just always looked back at Evolving Skies and compared everything to that. Things have changed now though. It's still it's a great set, but yeah, there's a lot to it anyway. But I'm talking about Evolving Skies singles, which maybe you're gonna say, hey Phil, that's a little bit like you're choosing Evolving Skies. So what if we look at something like some Chilling Reign singles? So here I'm on the Shadowrider Calyrex VMAX. I don't even think I've spoken about this card ever on the channel, but I really like this card, man. It reminds me of the Sword and Shield DLC. Anyway, in the last 6 months, check this out. We're selling for $68. And again, right now, throughout the whole 6 months, still selling for $68. There has been no market drop for this card whatsoever, nor has there been a spike. As you can see, these previous cards, those desired cards of the evolutions were climbing, but again, the Chill and Rain cards have stayed very resilient. What if we look at something like the Sleeping Tyranitar from Battle Styles? Here we go, I'm on the Sleeping Tyranitar from Battle Styles, and again, we're selling for $200 US in March. And that's actually climbed a fair bit. Right now, selling for $263. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that opening your eyes up a little bit? That, hey, maybe this whole market drop or the whole crazy crash or everything, it's probably more directed to the newer stuff because cards that have gone through a few generations. That's why it's actually important to collect during your generation and finding quiet periods. A big thing is finding moments of quiet in the hobby. I'm not like, look, you need to kind of do your own research to find out what is something that's in a quiet period. I mean, when we're talking about cards that are a few eras ago, we can even talk about Brilliant Stars and the Charizard V. Check this out, last 6 months, okay? We're selling for $237, went all the way up to $356, and right now selling for $319. Again, had a little bit of it's gone up a little bit in price, but it's still stayed pretty, in the last 6 months, it's still quite high up from what it was 6 months ago. You know what's another card that I find under the radar? Aerodactyl from Lost Origin. This alternate art, dude, what a cool artwork. Again, see, some of these Sword and Shield cards, man, they're just, I don't want to use under the radar because that's such an everyone says, oh, they're underrated. They're not really underrated. They're pretty fairly rated. The only thing is everyone's focusing on hypermodern. You got to kind of look away for when everyone's eyes are on one thing, just try pull into another direction. Anyway, look at this. We're selling 6 months ago for $156. went all the way up to $231, sorry, and right now it's selling for $215. Again, throughout this period when there's been this big drop, this card has just stayed, like, it just climbed a little bit in the market. So this is what I mean, like, there's so many cards in this era, man. There's so many cool cards that have not really felt the shakes of what's happening, and that's why you gotta kind of do a lot of research when it comes to Pokemon cards. You need to have your wits about you, and you need to actually not just be like, hey, it's crashing, or hey, it's dropping. I've talked about the hypermodern stuff, but then when I research other areas and other pockets of the market, you realize, well, yeah, we're going through a bit of a hypermodern thing right now. We're not really going through a Pokemon crash, really. Because if you look at Sword and Shield, hey, that hasn't done any real movements. You know, they've been fine. Most of the Sword and Shield era cards have been fine. And if not, if they haven't dropped, they've actually just stayed just stagnant, like I showed you with the Shadowrider Calyrex. I mean, a card that I just spiked my interest was the Galarian Slowking V, because I thought that's a Kamiya artwork. I think that's really cool. But I like, check this one out here. Again, look at that. We're selling for $68. And right now, in the last 6 months, selling for $107. So yeah, I mean, is the market dropping, or is the hyper modern stuff dropping? You got to kind of just look at different cards. This card has climbed up in price. Sure, there might be, it's a Kamiya artwork, more people are aware of it. But what's really important is just to be researching your sets and researching what is happening. I'm not actually, I think right now, and like I'm going to predict it, this is my call at the moment, different sets and different TCGs are the ones that we all need to be looking out for in the future. I do think that Pokemon, not that it's run its course or anything like that, I just think people are interested in other stuff. Like even me as a collector, this year I've been way more interested in, like a lot of the time, I've actually been looking at a lot of Dragon Ball this year. I know I haven't made that much content about it. I'm going to get to it, don't worry. You guys all asked me for my Dragon Ball content. I'm getting there. I know the story booster boxes come out. All that. I know all of that. It's just, I got to get the time. I got to find the time. But you know what I'm saying, even this year, I've been really exploring Dragon Ball. Heaps. And I know a lot of people have been dabbling in other TCGs. I know Palworld, a lot of people are collecting that. One Piece, like I've always said, One Piece doesn't even need Pokemon. There's a market that doesn't even bother collecting Pokemon. They're just in One Piece, okay? With Dragon Ball, I would say, just general kind of feel of it, that Dragon Ball doesn't have a pure Dragon Ball collector market as much as it does, hey, I collect Pokemon and Dragon Ball. Same with Palworld. One Piece kind of does have that. I'm not saying that they don't collect Pokemon, there's still heaps that do, but One Piece does have a bit more of a solo kind of collector base. I wouldn't be surprised though with Dragon Ball actually getting a bit more like that, especially next year, because yeah, a lot of the massive fan bases. You got Xenoverse 3 coming out next year. You've got the new Super Anime returning next year. All this, oh wow, it's going to be big. It is going to be big. So you got to be just prepared for that. But really exciting stuff too, man. Like I got to say, the hobby right now is in an interesting position. I do wonder what's going to happen when the 30th celebration releases. That's something we all need to monitor. Though I suppose there is a few questions of what's going to happen, or are we right now in a buyer's market? I think a lot of people are asking that. Well, you can actually see my answer to that in this video on screen here. In this video on screen, I go over it and look, hey, are we actually in a buyer's market right now? Click that video. I really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.